Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. It's about learning. We should have the base of Mikdash immediately. Should be refuah shlema for all those that need. And the Yidden in Ukraine should be safe. We're going to start today Chaf Beis Amud Aleph, which is 22a, in the middle of the page. Okay, we had a discussion about putting in the mikveh vessels inside another vessel. We said that there was a distinction between if those vessels are going to be used for truma, or if those vessels are going to be used, if those vessels are going to be used for kodesh. If it's used for kodesh, which means sacrificial food, then they cannot be immersed one vessel in another vessel. If they're used for truma, which means just the gift to the Kohen, then they can be immersed one vessel inside another vessel. So what was the issue with the vessel in the vessel? What was the issue? Rabbi Ila said the problem was that there would be a chatzitza. It would interpose between the water if the upper vessel was pressing on the inner vessel was pressing on the outer one. And Rabbi said that the issue was that maybe they would put it in a vessel that had a lip that was too narrow, an opening that was a mouth that was too narrow, and then the water would not be considered connected to the mikveh. There are two reasons why there was a concern for immersing a vessel inside another vessel by kodesh. Now the Gemara says, "V'had Rava v'Rabila Tanaihi." It's actually a machlekes Tanaim. These two explanations for why you can't immerse a vessel in a vessel. One more point was that we said, what was the practical difference between Rava and Ravila? What's the reason why you can't immerse a vessel in a vessel for kodesh? We said the practical difference would be if it was a wicker basket. Where according to Rabbi Ila, where the upper vessel, the inner vessel pushes on the outer one, pushes down, presses down, and it would interpose. Well, that's a problem in a wicker basket as well. If it weighs more, it's going to push down, it's going to interpose, it'll be a chatzitza. But according to Rava, it says the whole concern was that maybe the opening of the vessel is going to be narrow. Well, if it's a wicker basket, the opening is at least as large as the bottom, as the base of it. It's not, you're never going to have that issue, and therefore it would be permissible. So now we say like this, that this machlekes is really an earlier machlekes. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. It's interesting. The Gemara is not asking lema ketanoi like it does when two Amoraim state halachas. Sometimes there's a machlekes, let's say, I don't know, Rav and Shmuel. And the Gemara says lema ketanoi. Let's say that this machlekes took place earlier, and it quotes a brisa that has similar statements to Rav and a similar statement to Shmuel. And then the Gemara is asking, if Rav and Shmuel, let's say, this one lines up exactly with that earlier opinion of Rabbi Meir, I don't know, and if Shmuel holds up with the earlier opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, so why didn't they say, I paskin like Rabbi Meir, and why didn't he say, I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda? So the Gemara is asking it as a question. Over here, the Gemara is not asking it as a question. Over here, the Gemara is saying that these two reasons we actually find earlier, and there's no problem with that because they're not stating a halacha really. They're giving a reason for another halacha, and we have earlier sources for both of these reasons. That's what it seems. Yeah, the Tanya was taught in a brisa. Sal v'gargusni. These are these two baskets, wicker baskets. Shemil and kalim. You fill them up with utensils. See where we are in the middle of the page on the base. V'hitbilan, and you put them in the mikveh, you were toivel them, bein l'kodesh, bein l'truma, tahirin. It's perfectly fine. Who would hold that it's perfectly fine? Well, we have a brisa here that the first opinion holds that it's fine. This would fit also with the opinion of Rava, because Rava said that what was our issue with vessels inside another vessel was because maybe the mouth of it was going to be narrow. But if it would be a wicker basket, we don't have that concern. And so here, look at this. We don't have that concern. And even for kodesh, you could be toivel vessels inside a basket. Abba Shol Omer,
There's a lot of other vessels that are like that, not just baskets.
Yeah,
No.
right. It could be other vessels as well. This was an example of where the mouth has no concern. The mouth is wide. Abashal Aimer Litruma Valayla Kodesh. Abashal says no. It's only for Truma. Well, that would fit with the opinion of Rab Ila that said the same law that we said in our Mishnah, where you can't be toivel one vessel in another vessel for Kodesh, also applies to a salvig argusni, to a basket, because the weight of the inner vessel is going to weigh down, it will interpose. So you see that fits perfectly with Abashal that says the same thing. So the machlekes between Rava and Rab Ila turns out is a machlekes Tanakam and Abashal. Okay. Gemara now says a very basic question. If you really have an issue here of maybe the lip is too narrow, the mouth is too narrow, or you have a concern about maybe it's going to be a chatzitza, why do you say it's only an issue for Kodesh? I was expecting this question much earlier, but we went through the different logic of possibly this, possibly that. The Gemara says, well, that should apply for Truma as well. It should not be just a stringency for sacrificial food for their utensils. The Gemara says, Laman Kamrinan, who are we saying that this is an issue for? Don't be toivel a vessel inside a vessel. Who are we telling this to? It says, Chaverim. We're not telling this to an Amaretz. We're telling this to a Chaver, to someone that really knows the halachas and someone that's very careful with purity. We're talking to him. Now, if that's the case, so Chaverim Meida Yadi, a Chaver would know to be careful that the lip should be wide enough, that the vessel should not weigh down on the outer vessel, and it shouldn't interpose. So when it comes to Truma, we don't have a concern that maybe the Chaver did it wrong. If it would be an Amaretz, so we're not talking to him anyway. He's not going to listen to us. What are we telling him? Halachas. So we're talking to the Chaver, and the Chaver knows how to do it. Where it says, well, you're getting into a difficult situation now. This is sort of like a trap. So you ask these questions, you lead him on, you say, aha. So if that's the case, Kodesh Nami. So who were you talking to when you said that this is an issue for Kodesh, for sacrificial food? You were talking to an Amaretz? No, you were talking to a Chaver. You told me that the Chaver knows how to be toivel and he knows how to be careful, because you said that's what he does for Truma. So what does he forgets about it for Kodesh? And all of a sudden he doesn't know how to do it for Kodesh. Umar says, well, when it comes to Kodesh, which means sacrificial foods, sacrifices in their vessels, Chazilei Amaretz. The Amaretz is going to see the Chaver putting a vessel in a vessel. And the Chaver knows how to do it. He knows he's going to make sure that it doesn't weigh down. He's going to make sure that the mouth is wide enough. However, the Amaretz is going to be watching. Va'azal matpil, and then the Amaretz is going to go and copy him. When he copies him, he's not going to understand the distinction since he's going to mess it up. So,
we're not even from the Amaretz anyway.
Hold the question for another line or two.
No problem.
Yeah, the Gemara really wants to tell you everything at the same moment, but
Okay.
That's why the Eibishter gave us that Seres Dibur, so all 10 at the same time, because there were questions. And okay. The Gemara asks, okay, so 1 second. So you're telling me that it's not a concern about the Chaver. Okay. It's not a concern about the Chaver. It's really a concern about the Amaretz that's watching the Chaver. So you said it's only a problem for Kodesh. So 1 second. Shumanami. Chazilei Amaretz Vasal Matpil. Yet what's going to happen over here? You said that it's not a problem for Truma. The Chaver knows how to do it. He's going to do it correctly. He's going to do it correctly for Kodesh and for Truma.
Oh.
The only problem was the Amaretz was going to be watching him. So he said, for Kaidish, he can't do it. So,
When you
but
say
the
for-
Amaretz
for
is watching him
Kodesh, you
for
mean like for Kalim and other vessels.
Kalim that would be used for Kaidish.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if the Amaretz is watching him for Kaidish, and that's a concern, he's watching him for Truma also, and that's a concern. The Gemara answers, what are you worried about? We don't accept Truma from the Amaretz. So even if he does it wrong, but that doesn't bother us.
Even if he does it right, you don't accept it.
No, even if he does it wrong.
Oh.
So it's not coming into our domain anyway. So he doesn't listen to us. We're not concerned that he's going to make a mistake watching someone else, because it's never going to come back to us, because we don't accept Truma from them. So the Gemara says, well, Kaidish nami lo nekabel minayo. Then maybe we shouldn't accept Kaidish from them. We shouldn't accept things, the sacrifices and all of that. The Gemara says, well, that you can't do. Havale Eva. Familiar with the concept of Eva? Eva is antagonism, it's a conflict.
Right.
If you tell them we don't accept sacrifices because we don't trust your vessels, then it's going to create conflict between the people. It's going to be antagonism. So we have to accept sacrifices, and therefore we have to make sure that their utensils are toiveled properly. They went to the mikveh properly, and therefore we have to make sure that we do it properly so that they don't copy us and do it wrong. So this is just the concept for Kodesh, where it says, well, Truma nami havali eva. What about Truma? By Truma, you're allowed to do it in a way that they may make a mistake when they copy you. And what about their Truma? They want to, maybe they want to give their Truma to a Kayan. It says, well, don't worry about that. Not every Kayan was a Chaver. They have a friend that's a Kayan, that's an Amaretz. And if we don't take the Truma from them, fine. So you don't want my Truma? I'll give it to my friend who's an Amaretz, and he will take it.
But even so, if the Amaretz was Tam, he gave Truma to a Kain. Can he become Tame from the Truma?
No, the Kain doesn't become. The problem is really, I guess this is like a basic problem, but that the problem is that Truma that's Tame is problematic. You can't eat Truma that's Tame.
Yeah.
That's
So
the real problem.
Nothing.
So what happens if you eat Truma Tameya? I think there's a like a very strict prohibition, and I forget what the punishment
But
is.
you have to take someone by their word that it is.
Yeah. So usually we trust everyone that would be involved in purity. We call them a chaver. The problem is that from the problem is that it could be an Amaretz that wants to give. So we don't take from the Amaretz, right? Someone that's not from.
Someone's not from Kempsey House and gives you fruits or something, you would be suspect. What is this? Okay, put off this side, we'll do it when we leave, right? Same
Right.
idea.
Yeah, someone explained that Shalach Manas is for that we shouldn't be overly strict about every person's kashrus. They say, I don't eat from him, and all that. No. Drop the those personal things. So there's one time a year that everyone eats everyone else's food coloring. Okay. So, where are we holding right now? That the real distinction here, after everything is said and done with how to be toivel kalim, the real distinction is that Truma, we're not going to accept from the Amaretz anyway. So for that, we're able to be toivel, and we're able to be toivel correctly, even a keli inside a keli, and we're not concerned that the Amaretz is going to learn and do it improperly, because we're not going to take his Truma anyway. When it comes to Kodesh, which we do have to accept from him, so we have to be toivel our kalim in a way that the Amaretz won't learn and do it improperly. Okay. Man Tana de Chayesh Leiva. Who's the Tana that says that we are concerned about Ava, antagonism. If we're not going to accept from them the Kodesh, it's going to create a conflict and it'll be problematic. We say Rabbi Yossi. That's actually the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Yes, if you want to remember this, remember Rabbi Yossi was the one that stayed silent during the conversation with Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon about if the Romans are special. So he's Chayesh Leiva. It has no connection at all. I'm just helping the memory. Okay. He's a student of Rabbi Akiva. He's the author of the Seder Olam. Nimuka Yimai, the Gemara says. Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. Seder Olam, Okay. The Tanya was taught in a Brisa. He's the one that lived in Tzipori or was exiled to Tzipori, depending on the version there. How it goes. Was he exiled to Tzipori or from Tzipori? Okay. Rabbi Yossi, the Tanya, it was taught in a Brisa. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, you see, one of the things given to the Beis Hamikdash is wine and oil. This is considered Kodesh. And where'd they get the wine and oil from? Well, whoever had a vineyard or olive, what's it called? An olive yard, olive grove. They would press the grapes of the oil and they would bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. Now, this could be it was from an Amaret, but there were certain times of the year that everyone would be toivel. All the vessels were toiveled, and they would make sure that they did it properly. What about the rest of the year? Rabbi Yossi says, why do we accept wine and oil from anyone the whole year? He says, if we didn't, we would have everyone building their own temple. Yeah.
So there were 9 paradigms in our history, but they were there when they were
Yeah,
there were
the paraduma I think is an exaggeration, but
9.
yeah, but the concept is that people would end up doing their own thing.
Go rogue.
Yeah. One time I read an article, Yosef, I don't know if you'll agree with this. I read an article, the difference between Ashkenazic halacha and Sephardic halacha. Turns out that in Ashkenazic halacha, there's some very strict opinions. And in Sephardic halacha, sometimes there's like more leniencies in those areas. I'm generalizing over here. But the explanation that they were giving for these examples was that Ashkenazim have Orthodox, conservative, and Reform. And if not everyone can handle it, they have other shuls to go to, temples to go to. Sephardim don't have that. They don't have a conservative and Reform. So the halacha sort of encompassed more, was more. They don't have it. There has to be more accepting and more lenient and more to be able to, so that even a non-observant Sephardi still goes to the from shul. They didn't create other things. So here, but coming back to, I don't know if that's correct, but whatever the case is, coming back to this, we didn't want people to say, oh yeah, I'm not accepted here, so now I have to build my own my own Beis Hamikdash and all this. No, we're going to this big umbrella. We're going to be able to incorporate everyone. Okay, and that's because of Ava. That's the concept of Ava. Who says this? It's Rabbi Yossi. Amar Rav Papa says, "Kaman mekablinan ha'idna sadusa mi'amaretz." According to which opinion do we accept testimony? I don't know if it means in court or other types of testimony. Maybe it means in court. From an amaretz, Kaman, who does that go? Like Rabbi Yossi. It's following Rabbi Yossi that there's a concern of Ava. We have to be able to incorporate everyone, to include everyone in the basic, infrastructure of how society should work. Okay, now the Gemara has an interesting question. What we just did was we said that the Amei Aretz are going to have truma that we're not going to accept. We're only accepting their kodesh. That's what we just did. That's basically what we came out. We said that when you toivel kalim for truma, you can do it in a way that the Amaretz may learn and mess up. It may not do it correctly. Why? Because we're not worried, because we're not taking truma from them anyway. The only problem is v'neichash l'shayla. But what about their kalim? We would borrow utensils. We don't take their food, but their utensils we would borrow. That was a common thing, to borrow utensils. And if we're borrowing their utensils have turned out as really tummy.
Yeah.
Ditanan. Okay, what's going to happen now until the middle of the next Amud is going to be a long brisa that's going to end up just telling me one point, that we borrow utensils from an Amaretz. Okay, now in this, we're going to learn some very interesting things, but the our target is just to get that one. That's our agenda here. It goes like this. The Tanana was taught in a Mishnah. It's a Mishnah. It's not a brisa. Klei cheres matzel ala kol. Okay. Klei cheres, an earthenware, a pottery utensil. If it's sealed and it's in a house that has a corpse, the food contents that's inside it is still pure, even though it's under the same roof as a corpse. Why? Klicheres, the klicheres is matzel from Oyalamis. It protects. Let's say there's vessels inside the klicheres. It also protects those vessels. I don't remember if that's accurate. If it protects those vessels.
As long as it's not open.
As long as it's not open.
Klicheretz is just a sealed cleat.
Yeah. Earthenware, it has to be pottery. It can't be metal. Pottery.
Oh, all right.
There's one more halacha, is that if it's put over a skylight or an opening on the floor, to go to an attic, if there's a corpse on the lower level, the tumah does not spread through that skylight because it got sealed up by this big barrel, this pottery barrel that covered it up, covered over the hole. The skylight covers over the skylight. It makes it as if it's sealed, and the tumah only spreads outward. Goes out, it doesn't go up. So what happened over here, it says klicheres matzel ala kol divrei beis Hillel. If someone takes a klicheres, and the missing words over here is that he takes a klicheres from an amaretz. Okay, that's the big deal. It doesn't say that clearly, but that's the idea. He takes a klicheres from an amaretz, and he puts it on his skylight. It's not a skylight. It's like an opening that goes into the roof, that goes into the attic.
The vessels inside are...
The vessels inside are pure, and anything that's in the attic is pure. That's the words of Beis Hillel so far. It only protects the klicheres, because klicheres is only tamei from inside, and it only protects the food. But if there's vessels, utensils there, they become tamei. Amru lahem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel has a conversation with Beis Shammai about this. Mipnei ma amru Beis Shammai. Mipnei shu tamei al gabi aretz. Oh, mipnei ma Mipnei ma, it's supposed to be. What's your reason? Amru Beis Shammai says, Mipnei shu tamei al gabi amaretz. Vein kli tamei chaitzes. I have a problem here. Where do you get the vessel from that you're using to protect everything else? You got it from an amaretz. An amaretz is considered tamei. We don't trust him that he's tar. So when you have an impure vessel doesn't protect from other impurities. The tumah spreads through the impure vessel. I think everyone agrees that an impure vessel doesn't protect. The only problem is So what's happening now? Basil is saying that we're not considering it impure. That it's coming from an amaretz, we're considering it pure. And Beisham is saying we're considering it impure, it's coming from an amaretz. That's what it seems to be the difference. Amalam Basil says, but you said the food is tar. And then you're telling me it doesn't protect. How do you say the food is tar? Amalam Beishamai says, well, I'm sorry.
If it's tar, then it does protect.
If it's tar, then it obviously is protecting. How can you differentiate between the food and the vessels?
Maybe
It has to be.
Maybe it doesn't like domino effect. Maybe like the
I hear what
the
you're saying.
outer cleat becomes tame.
The outer cleat is
The
tame.
inner one is still tower.
And the inner one,
No, the opposite.
they're saying the outer one is tame.
No.
And the inner ones are also tame, but the inner food is tahar. That was what Beishamai saying. And Basil is saying, you can't have that. That's impossible. So Beishamai responds, we're just saying that the Amaretz can eat it. Amaretz isn't careful with tum and tar anyway. But should we say that the vessels are also pure because we borrow vessels from them? This is the point that we were looking for. Beishamai says that if we say the vessels are pure, what vessels are there? Metal vessels. No one would ever borrow klicheres from an amaretz. No one's going to take food from an amaretz, but a vessel you would, and you would consider it pure. Problem is, it was in a klicheres that you thought was protecting. The amaretz comes to you and says, everything is pure. I said, yeah, it's pure according to your standards. You thought that your klicheres was pure, but your klicheres was tamei. That's why you think your metal vessels are pure. Turns out, if the klicheres was tummy, the metal vessels are tummy also. And therefore, what Beishamai says is that the metal vessels are not protected. The metal vessels become tummy.
Is this tame through what? Which way? Like a corpse?
Yeah.
Our corpse is all over the place.
Yeah,
It's
you
like
would have to
nowadays
say
you
that.
don't
Right?
really come across it.
Well, we have different ways of moving things around. Someone passes away, they get brought to here. There it wasn't like it wasn't the same story. Also hospitals and things. Okay. Tanya was taught in a brisa. We're still going on with this, that we're borrowing vessels, but we continue with this discussion. There's a brisa that says, Amar Rabbi Yeshua says, Boishni midivrechem beishamai. You may be familiar with this from Tanya. Rabbi Yeshua says, I'm ashamed of what you're saying, Beishamai. I'm embarrassed. It's so illogical. It says, Efshir isha lasha ba'ariva. Is it possible there's a woman that's kneading dough in a metal bowl? She's in her attic and she's kneading dough. Now, there was a corpse down below. There was a klicheres blocking the opening. What's going to happen according to Beishamai? Isha v'ariva tmeya. The bowl is tamei because we say the klicheres, the pottery, doesn't protect against. It doesn't protect the utensils, so the bowl is tamei. The woman is tamei. It doesn't protect the woman either. However, Isha tmeim shiva. They're tamei for 7 days. And batzuk is tar, but the dough is tar. So you have a tummy mace, you have a tummy bowl, and the food in the bowl is tar. How'd that work?
In the concept of oil, so a human being becomes tummy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with the pot covering the hole or the woman kneading the dough. It's the fact that it's an oil that makes it tummy.
Yeah. The problem is that the pottery that was covering the hole is protecting the food.
Right.
The problem is
It's food natama in an oil.
Yeah.
Oil. So basically, if someone passes away in a house and everything in the house
becomes tamei. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now the food has no solution. The food can never become.
What about the
The food can never become tar. Yeah, the food can never become tar, but the people and the utensils go to the mikveh.
Period, yeah.
After 7 days, they have to get sprinkled, whatever. But then on the seventh day, they go to the mikveh and they're tar. They get sprinkled on the third and seventh.
But in this,
I thought we learned elsewhere. In the house and the exodus path is designated.
Yeah, that was a question, right? That was a question. That was a question of the entrance ways in the windows are also all tamei unless we have it designated as in the archway. If there's utensils in the archway, are they also tamei?
Path is designated and they're clearly in another room.
Oh, if the room is closed, yeah, if the room would be closed, then it would be fine.
Yeah.
But here we're talking about that the opening in the roof is only closed with an earthenware vessel. So it's not really closed. So we're saying that the tumah spreads through. Why that earthenware vessel was tamei, so it spreads through, but it still protects food. So Rabbi Yeshua says, I'm ashamed of what you're saying. It's illogical that the food should be tar and the woman in the bowl, the kneading bowl, is tamei. Lugin mali mashkin. If you have, let's say you have flasks in this attic, it's full of liquid, whatever it is, wine, oil. Lugin tami tuma shiva. The containers need to be sprinkled on the tummy for 7 days, mashkin tyron, but the food inside, the liquid inside is tar. Nitpalei talmidechad mitalmidei beishamai. Nitpala means like attached himself. A certain student from the students of Beishamai went over to Rabbi Yeshua. Amalai, Amalach Taiman shall Beishamai. I could explain to you what Beishamai says. Amalai Amar, Rabbi Yeshua says, go ahead. Rabbi Yeshua is Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania. He's a student of Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai, who was a student of Beisila and Beishamai. So he's very, connected to. This is the time of the Talmidi Hillel and Shammai. Rabbi Yeshua's friend, Rabbi Eliezer, was considered a Shammai, influenced by Beishamai. Is called Shamuti, and Rabbi Yeshua was like against the Beishamai. So the student comes to Beishamai. The student of Beishamai comes to Rabbi Yeshua and says, "I can explain to you what Beishamai's opinion is." He says, "Go ahead." Amalai. So the student says, "Klei tami chaytzitz ayena chaytzitz." He does this he asks a lot of questions. He leads Rabbi Yeshua to the answer. He says, "Does a klei tamei separate between tumah? Will that be stop the tumah from going into the attic?" Amalei, Rabbi Yeshua says, "Eina chaytzitz." It will separate. He says it doesn't separate because it's tamei. Only if it would be pure would it separate. If it's tamei, it doesn't. Now he asks him again. He says, "Keli shel amaretz tamei yatar." Is the vessel tamei or tar if it belongs to an amaretz? Says Amalei tamei. I agree with you. It's tamei. Says v'imata oimer tamei. And if you say that it's tamei, klum mashkiach alecha. Is there anyone that's watching him? V'loyayid elashimatan leitamei amar oimerlach shalitar v'shalachtar. What's going to happen is like this. If you tell him that it's tamei, he said, if you tell the amaretz your vessels are tamei, is he going to listen to you that his vessels are tamei? He doesn't think his vessels are tamei. It's like these people that say, "I keep a kosher home." You tell them, well, your dishes are whatever. They don't listen to you. Plus, we had someone over here said they went to they came home from yeshiva. They went to the mother went to McDonald's. They didn't eat pig, but they didn't keep kosher. So they came home from yeshiva. It was becoming about shiva. Went to his mother took them. They went to McDonald's. He said, "No, I can't. It's not kosher." He said, "What? It's not pig." So he said, "No, my rabbi in yeshiva said that it's the same thing." So the mother said, "He doesn't know what he's talking about." Okay, so is he, when you tell him that it's your vessel is tamei, is he going to listen to you? He's not going to listen to you. And when you tell him that it's tamei, you know what he's going to tell you back? Shalitar v'shalach tamei. My vessels are tar, your vessels are tamei. They're not going to listen to you when you tell them it's tamei. Okay, so what's going to happen is like this. He's going to tell you all his vessels are tar. Meanwhile, how did he protect the attic where he kept all those vessels? How did he protect them? By using a earthenware vessel to cover the hole, to cover the opening. He thinks all his vessels are tar, so he thinks that protected. Turns out that you tell him that you think that his vessels are tamei, earthenware for sure. You see, there's a distinction here between metal vessels and earthenware vessels. Metal vessels could be tar because he puts them in the mikveh whenever he has a question. The amaretz, they really could be tar. The problem is the earthenware vessels he can never purify. He thinks they're tar, but you think they're tamei, which means that really all his vessels are really tamei, because could be there was a corpse in the house. He used the earthenware vessel to cover it up. Turns out that really all his vessels are tamei, even the metal ones that he could have purified if they would have become tamei. But he thinks that they didn't become tamei because of the protection of. So he says, "V'zeu taimen shel Beis Shammai," and this is Beis Shammai's reason. You know why Beis Shammai said that the vessels are not protected from the earthenware vessel? Because for you, his earthenware vessel that was protecting the metal vessel was really tamei, so it doesn't really protect it, and you're going to borrow it. Beis Shammai is very logical. The food you're not going to take, but the
keli from a hamaretz.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah.
To take a keli from an amaretz, we would take a keli from an amaretz, but we have to explain that the vessel, that earthenware vessels don't protect metal vessels, and then we would take a keli from an amaretz. In other words, the amaretz needs to accept that halacha that an earthenware vessel doesn't protect over other vessels. Okay. This is the reason for Beis Shammai. Miyad halach Rabbi Shua v'neshtateach al kiver Beis Shammai. Rabbi Shua goes and he prostrates himself on the grave of the students of Shammai. Amar, he says, Na nesi lachem atzames. How do they translate Beis Shammai? How does na nesi mean? What do they translate that? Oh, I've spoken excessively against you, bones of Beis Shammai. Na nesi means I responded too much. If your things that are unclear have such a good explanation, things that you actually explained for sure. Amru, they said, Kol Yamav, all the days of Rabbi Shua, his teeth were black because of his fast. He fasted so much that his teeth became black because of what he said against Beis Shammai. He said, I was ashamed of what Beis Shammai said, and then he realized that he had spoken too much, so he fasted. Katani Mias, remember this in Tanya in Hushkushina B'nei remember that? This, it says the Alter Rebbe quotes it. Katani Mias, what we got from this is that L'cha v'loi Alma Shalin Minayo. It says that kalim are borrowed from an amaretz. It was a long discussion to give us that point, but the point is that what are you telling me that you don't take the truma from an amaretz? So the way that he toivels his kalim for truma doesn't bother us. What are you talking about? You take the kalim from the amaretz. So of course it bothers us how it affects us. So the Gemara says, Kishalin minayo matbalin lahu. Don't worry about it. Whenever we borrow vessels, we've always put them in the mikveh. Just 1 second. Ihachi, if that's the case, Nadrinalu Beisil Beis Shammai, then Beis Hillel has such a good answer to Beis Shammai. Kishalin minayo matbalin lahu. Beis Shammai says, oh, you have a big problem. You're going to borrow their vessels. The vessels are really tamei. What are you talking about? We're going to put them in the mikveh when we borrow them. Such a good answer. The Gemara says, no, it's not a good answer. Because tamei meis bayazaya gimel v'zayin umana l'zayin yamim lemushli inshi. In that case, it was tamei meis. If it's tummy mace, tummy from a corpse, then you have to sprinkle on it on the third day and on the seventh day, and people don't lend their vessels for 7 days. They lend it for the afternoon. Another pshat over here could be that people don't borrow the vessel 7 days before they're going to be able to use it. You borrow the vessel when you need. No one thinks in advance. It's like copies in the yeshiva office. No one does them the day before. You do it like quick. I have a test coming out. Started 5 minutes ago. Okay, so the Gemara says now, you're telling me that you don't trust the Amaretz, that he was toivel the vessels, and you have to go be toivel them. You have a brisa that says we trust them, that they put the vessels in the mikveh. You're telling me that we have to be toivel them ourselves. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, 1 second. We didn't say that you trust him that he put his vessels in the mikveh. We said we trust him on the immersion of a tamei mace, which means habegufay, like kasha, habegufay, habekelev. For he himself, we trust him that he went to the mikveh. He has to go to the mikveh on the 7th day after the sprinkling. But his utensils, we don't trust that they went into the mikveh. He's going to be more lenient about that, and we have to put them in the mikveh ourselves. Rava Amaridi Vidi Bekelev. Rava says another answer. Both of them is talking about the utensils. But like kasha, it's also not a contradiction between do we trust him or do we not? Why? Because Hadi Amar Miyalim Layatvalti Keli B'Teich Keli. We ask him a question. When he said, did you toivel the vessel? He says, yes. He says, did you toivel one vessel inside another vessel? We ask him another question, because that could be problematic. Maybe he didn't know how to distinguish between the size of the opening or if the vessel was weighing down. So he says, no, I never did that anyway. I never put a vessel inside another vessel. So we trust him. And this is where he says, yeah, I did put a vessel inside a vessel, but don't worry, I know what I'm doing. The opening was wide enough. So for that, we don't trust. That we don't trust, because maybe he thought it was, it really wasn't, and he thought it wasn't a big deal. That we don't. Okay. The problem is now, Vahatanya, we have a brisa. Neman amaretz leimar peris lehochshru. Oh, no, this Vahatanya. Vahatanya, this is not a problem. This Vahatanya, this is what it was taught in a brisa. This is one of those Vahatanyas that's a proof. But you see, the word Vaha could mean but, and it could also mean this. On that card. So, which tell the Vahatanya is a compound word. Vahatanya. So usually Vahatanya means, but it was taught in a brisa, it's problematic. Over here it's telling me exactly this. Vahatanya, and it was taught in a brisa. Neman amar tzleimer peris lehochshru, avaleina neman leimer peris hochshru avalei nitmu. You see, we do trust in Amaret sometimes, but he has to tell us that these fruits never got wet. If he tells us the fruits never got wet, never became susceptible to tumah, we trust him. But if he tells us the fruits did get wet, but they didn't become tamei, we say no. We don't trust him that they didn't become tamei. We trust him if they never got wet. But once you're telling me details, so that we don't trust. Now the Gemara asks, do we trust him according to Abaya? At least we said that we trust him, that he went to the mikveh. Do we really trust him? But it was taught in a brisa. If someone that's not an amaretz, a chaver, he comes to, we have to sprinkle the water on him. We sprinkle right away. He tells us why we're sprinkling right away, because he says, I waited 3 days since I came in contact with the corpse. 3 days later, ready to go. We don't sprinkle right away by an amaretz. We wait 3 days. We have to know that he wasn't in contact with the corpse. He can't sprinkle before the 3rd day. So he has to wait 3 days. And now you're telling me that we trust him that he went to the mikveh? The way it works is like this. we actually do trust him that he went to the mikveh. But you know why? Because he had to wait in front of us 3 days before we did the first sprinkling. Then we had to make certain that he didn't come in contact for the next 3 days, for the next 4 days, till the 7th day. We sprinkled again. At that point, we already trust him that he goes to the mikveh, because we're so strict on him at the beginning. So the last of the processes of the process, we say, okay, we trust him that he went to the mikveh, and that's what Abaya said before, that we trust him that the last step that he did on his own. Okay, let's leave it over here. Have a good day. A good Chodesh.
Thank you.